Chapter 18. I finally served our dinner as Marcus thumbed through the 8 missed calls he received on his iPhone. Thankfully, none from April. And then we sat down at the table opposite each other. This looks amazing, he grinned with approval, admiring my gastric creation. I think Dave might be out of a job. You are too polite. I laughed through my blushing. This could never be compared to a Michelin chef. I was finally feeling at ease with Marcos, and so I mustered up the courage to probe his enigmatic ways once more. I just wanted to ask why you travel so much, I wondered innocently, taking my first mouthful of food. I watched the candle flame twinkling within his succulent eyes. I mean, what I mean is, I stammered, if you are the boss, can't you do everything from home? Can't the business come to you? He glanced at me, chewing slowly. The truth? He began, swallowing his food. Being around April so much would drive me crazy. I threw a hand over my mouth, trying to contain my laughter. I'm sorry, I said quickly. I don't mean to laugh. It's fine. He laughed with me. I mean, come on. Women are hard work. I smiled, watching the golden hues of flickering light reflect along his chiseled jawline. Well, not all women are hard work, I replied, wrinkling a brow, cutting into my soft salmon. I know. He gave me a piercing glance. There is the exception. And I am it, honey. Silence. The sensual music of Café Del Mar lingered precariously through the air. How's your salmon? I asked. Exquisite, he answered, nodding his head. I'd pay top dollar for a meal like this. Could this man be any more perfect? Thank you, I smiled, feeling myself swell. I watched Marcus formulating his next words. I trust you, Bonnet, he said, and I don't know if you'd be interested. Oh, God, at him, what dying for him to get the words out. I stared at him. I'm wondering if you'd like to help me with some of my business things. Really? I questioned excitedly. In what way? Well, business things, he said. I'm sure by now you know how large the Almeida Group is. $16 billion large, honey. And I'd like for you to handle some of my personal things. My mind was quickly in the gutter again. Handle some of your personal things? Of course, I'll compensate you for it, he added quickly. Would you be happy with an extra $1,000 per week? Hell fucking yes, I would be. Wow, I gasped in shock. Marcos, that's a lot of money. You know you don't have to pay me extra. I'm happy to do it for you. And that's exactly why I want to pay you more, he insisted, sipping his wine. This will require another cell phone, different to the one you're using now. I won't say no to that either. Okay. Are you sure you're actually okay with this? He asked me adamantly. I am more than okay, Marcos, I reassured him. I feel privileged, really. It's a done deal then, he smiled. And on the odd occasion, I may ask for you to travel with me. Oh my God, Marcos, April will die. What about April? I clenched my jaw together awkwardly. Well, I'd only have you travel with me when she's out of town, he advised. She likes to do those the women getaway things with her lady friends. I understood explicitly. Uh-oh. He hit my heart with those eyes again. I think it's best if we keep this between us, he murmured, gazing at me lowly. You mean all of it? No, not all of it, Marcus answered quickly. Just the travel part. April's nose would be put out of joint if she knew of it. She'll be fine with the other things. Of course, I nodded. I was feeling bold. Maybe it was the wine, or maybe it was because of our wonderfully open and honest conversation we were having. Either way, I had to say what was loitering on the tip of my tongue. I would have kept everything a secret had you asked me, I blurted out. Marcus shot me those dark, haunting eyes again. I know you would have, Bonnet, he murmured quietly. I bet you are full of secrets. I felt my insides thundering within me. He was doing me no favors. I think you're right, I purred, unable to hide the suggestive smirk prying through my lips. And I bet he sat in silence, gazing at me, and I could do nothing but simply gaze back. He had already read me like an open book. This I was sure of. I couldn't front with someone like Marcus Almeida. He was just too instinctual, just too good. I took our empty plates and got up from the table. Would you care for some dessert? Nasty, Bonnie. No, thank you. Marcus inhaled deeply, stretching his strong arms above his head, finally getting up from the table. No, thank you. Marcus inhaled deeply, stretching his strong arms above his head, finally getting up from the table. I'm actually gonna go up to my office and return these phone calls, he said, glancing down at his cell phone, tipping the rest of his wine down the sink. Sure, I smiled, watching him walk around to my side of the kitchen counter. He stood a few feet in front of me. Bonnet, you have outdone yourself, he said, gazing at me thoughtfully. Thank you, really. I thoroughly appreciate you and what you've done. My wife loves you, and Henry does too. Thank you for coming into our family. Oh, don't, please. Emotions began to stir within me, and I had to turn away quickly. I glanced down at the bubbles rising in the sink. I was becoming besotted with this man. I took a deep breath and finally glanced back up at his stunning face. Thank you, Marcos. He nodded tenderly and disappeared from the kitchen. I sighed deeply, holding my overwhelmed head in my hands for a long minute, awash with intense thoughts flooding through my mind. Downing the rest of my wine in one mouthful, I cleaned that kitchen until not even the tiniest trace of our delightful dinner was evident. After, I dragged myself outside and took a walk through the sprawling dark gardens, peering up at the waxing moon cascading its luster over the endless beds of flowers and shrubs. I inhaled deeply, smelling the fresh breeze coming off the ocean. It brought a smile to my face. I'm so happy right now. Strolling along, I finally came across Marcus's office, sitting high up on the mountain bluff in the distance, shrouded in darkness, cloaked in mystery. I peered up at it, captivated. Just what do you do up there, Marcus Almeida? I wished more than anything to creep up that garden path and spy on him. But instead, I walked on, opening the door to my quarters and flopped onto my bed, laying there in the dark, gazing at the moon as it fell through the large, floor-length windows. I lay there, lost in a dream. What a spectacular night. Chapter 19. Saturday morning, finally. Nothing like rolling around in bed on the weekends, and I loved my sleep-ins. I could wake up when I wanted and eat a long, lazy breakfast. It didn't happen as often as I would have liked because April enjoyed eating breakfast with me, even on the weekends. So much to my own dismay, those long, lazy mornings were almost always short-lived. Putting on a cotton jersey dress with a cute little cardigan, I strolled up to the house and entered the atrium, basking in the streaming sunlight. "Oh, morning, honey," April called, remnants of last night's makeup still on her face, pouring herself a cup of coffee. "Morning, April," I said with a small smile. "Coffee?" "I'd love one, thank you. So, how was last night?" "Oh, amazing," she gushed, thumbing through the LA Times in her white robe. "Tal always puts on a great show. How was your night?" "Honey, where do I start?" "Oh, it was quiet," I said casually. "I went out for dinner and then just came home. Early night." "You fucking liar." "Marcus and I have another party tonight." She looked at me as she helped herself to bacon, eggs, and toast. Buttered toast. Bitch, how? It was so unfair. "That sounds nice," I smiled, already knowing full well that they did. I reached for several slices of mango. She sighed happily. "Oh, I'm sure it will be. Jerry and Fran Dalton are hosting." Ahem. Yes, that's the Dalton family that founded the chain of Dalton hotels all over America. They have a gorgeous 20-acre estate in Montecito. "Oh, that's great. What will you wear?" I asked, knowing I will be sitting at the table for an extra hour once she starts talking. "Well, I have this Lavon frock from Barney's," she exclaimed excitedly. "Oh, it's to die for." "Oh, well, you will have to show me before you leave," I replied eagerly. "It sounds lovely." "So, what will you get up to today?" she asked me politely as I sipped my much-needed coffee. "Oh, well, I thought I would..." I stopped mid-sentence when I saw Marcos, cool as ever, leisurely stroll into the atrium looking like he had just woken up. My heart started spazzing out again. We shared a fleeting glance. "Good morning, ladies." His velvet voice fell through my ears. "Oh, morning, honey." April grinned. "Good morning, Marcos." "Late night, honey?" April questioned, thrusting bacon and egg into her mouth. About 4 a.m. I glared at Marcos, slowly sipping my coffee. How did this man live like this? "It's only 9 now," I gasped. "Aren't you tired?" "Oh, Bonnie, this is a sleep-in for Marcos," April assured me, putting her hand gently on my wrist. I rarely hear him climb into bed. Marcus opened up the Financial Review. "Only because you snore so loud." April and I burst out laughing. This man's wit, "No, really, Barney," defended April, now sipping some orange juice. "I'm a very heavy sleeper. If a bomb went off, I wouldn't hear it." I observed Marcus's tired face, still managing to look more delicious than ever. It was effortless for him. "So, what's your plans for today, Bunny?" Marcus asked, making cordial small talk. No bonnet this time. I smirked under my breath. I quickly concluded that he mentioned my proper name from my ears only. Well, I have a much-needed massage at Baccara at 2. I smiled at him. And then some books to pick up from Borders after that. "What kind of books?" He raised his eyebrows inquisitively. "I bet you're a Jackie Collins fan." Dude, please. Actually, no. I've never read her books. I gave him a charmed glance. These are books on ancient antiquity, and one book by Sebastião Salgado. Well, Marcos almost fell out of his chair. "Wow," he gasped quietly, appearing more than astounded. "You have me speechless. I'm pleasantly surprised." "Who is he, honey?" April asked, reaching for another piece of buttered toast. hate her. He's one of the greatest documentary photographers. Oh, that's nice. April nodded, looking less than interested. As expected, I was still sitting at that table an hour later when we all noted a white Range Rover roll into the property. "That'll be Henry," muttered April, glancing out the window. Moments later, Henry bounced through the atrium with his best friend Seth, not far behind. "Mom, can I stay at Seth's again tonight?" he bellowed, thrusting his arm around April's shoulders. "Oh, honey, don't be a burden for Oksana," April replied, squeezing Henry's lean waist. "Oh, but she said it's okay," he insisted excitedly. "It's okay, Mrs. Almeida," Seth added assuredly. "My mom's just parking the car." Moments later, in waltzes Seth's mom, Oksana Engelby, the Russian dressed like she was ready to be picked up from Hollywood Boulevard. I watched her, sashaying in with her blonde hair extensions cascading down her back, cringing through my teeth at her big fake boobs uncomfortably smothered within a tight white halter top tucked into tiny denim jeans. Tight, tight, tight. Any tighter and she would squeeze out both ends. Is this how they all dress in Russia? We all immediately stood to our feet to greet her. "Oh, sorry to get you so early, April," she cried dramatically, clacking towards us in her pencil-thin Louboutin pumps. Oh, you should have seen her face suddenly change when her eyes fell over Marcos. "Oh, Marcos!" she gushed, leaning in to kiss him. Twice. "How are you?" I felt the blood immediately rush to my face, flaming my cheeks. Bitch kisses him twice in 10 seconds, and I've had nothing more than a handshake since I've started this job. April kissed her next and offered her to sit for a coffee. "Hi, Bonnie," she said, briefly glancing at me for no less than a second. I mean, don't exhaust yourself on the help or anything, Oksana. "Hi, Oksana." I gave her a small smile, just loving her overlined pink lips. God, she was hideous. "Marcos, I haven't seen you in so long," she prattled with her thick Russian accent, blinding me with the sparkling rock she flaunted on her wedding finger. So nouveau riche. What a whore. "Yes, well, you know, I have to spend some time with the wife," Marcos said, turning the page of the newspaper. Very quickly, it became rather obvious that not only I thought Marcos was breathtakingly handsome. I mean, who could blame Oksana when her husband was triple her age and more ugly than a baboon's ass? "Well, it's so nice to see you again," Oksana grinned, fondly glancing at Marcos's deliciousness, like she was ready to jump him right then and there. He has got to be noticing her advances. I glared at April, wondering if she was picking up on this slick bitch. Evidently she was, judging by the look on her face. "You too, Oksana. Actually, I needed to come home to pay April's bills," Marcos muttered cheekily, sipping his coffee. We all laughed politely. I bet you haven't even seen them yet. Well, April and Oksana became busy talking about last night's party and petty school gossip. I caught Marcos rolling his eyes behind the newspaper, listening to what they were talking about. I snickered to myself. He felt my wandering eyes and gave me a little wink. "So, how long are you back in town, Marcos?" Oksana asked, making it even more obvious she wanted to bed him. "I thought maybe Fred and I, along with you and April, could go to dinner one night at Treloon." "Oh, that sounds nice," April added, nodding courteously at Marcos. "Sure." Marcos smiled affably. I could sense immediately he had no interest. "I'll see my schedule." Ha! I knew it. "Excuse me," I said, getting up from the table. "I hope you all have a lovely day." "Oh, bye, honey," April answered, giving me a little wave. "Bye, Bunny," Marcos said quietly, slightly glancing over his shoulder at me. Looking down at him at that breakfast table, all I wanted to do was to run my hand across the nape of his neck and into his hair. I almost had to restrain myself. Chapter 20. True to form, I was running late. The massage at Bacara was thoroughly enjoyed, and the quick trip to pick up those books I ordered at Borders turned into a 4-hour jaunt down State Street. With a parched throat and sore feet, I drove home at dusk and stumbled into my quarters. Lola, 5 minutes later, came to my door. "Hey, Lola," I greeted her happily, hugging her comforting curves. "Bunny?" She smiled warmly, her jet black hair pulled into a tight braid. "Madame wants to show you her dress." "Okay, Lola, I'll be 1 minute." I quickly pulled my ragged feet out of my heels and slipped into some flats and went into the house. "Is that you, Bon?" April called out, hearing the door close behind me. "Yes, April," I answered, walking up the stairs. "Oh, come up, honey." I walked into the bedroom, seeing both her and Marcos getting ready for the party. I glanced down at their king-size bed. Wonder what happens on that. Suddenly Marcos walked out of his ensuite bathroom, looking sublime, fiddling with an untied bow tie around his neck. We shared a small smile, my stomach falling between my knees as his looming presence began to engulf me once more. April, meanwhile, was fumbling with a diamond earring, quickly becoming flustered. "April, you are absolutely stunning," I said, admiring her sheathed black dress. "This must be the Lavon." "Oh, it is," she said, turning to me with her head tilted, her fingers still struggling. "It's gorge, isn't it?" "Totally." "Don't you think, honey?" April called out to Marcos, who was now back in the bathroom. "Sure," he answered. "Here," I offered, walking toward her as she stood in front of her monster-sized mirror. "Let me help you with that earring." It was an earring, all right. The center diamond would have cracked at least 10 carats. "Oh, thank you, Bon. They're Graf," she cooed. "Marcus bought them for me for my 34th birthday." Meanwhile, Marcus came out of the bathroom again. "I can't get this tie right," he said impatiently. April gave him a blank face. "Well, honey, don't look at me. I have no idea how to tie a tie." "Do I have to wear one?" "Honey, it's black tie." April rolled her eyes, looking exasperated. "Of course." "I'll try if you like," I offered, smiling at him. "Oh, thanks, Bonnie," sighed April, tussling her immaculately styled hair. Her cell phone buzzed, and she began thumbing through her messages, quickly getting lost in social media. Marcos, with a freshly shaven face, walked up to me, walking up so close that his pelvis almost touched mine. I was shocked, but I liked it, and the air between our bodies changed immediately. He glanced down at me, not saying a word, just watching me with those eyes, those devastating eyes, staring at my disconcerted face as I began to fix his tie. The scent laced upon his neck quickly invaded my senses, and his warm, heavy breath swept against my forehead and down the bridge of my nose in slow, purposeful rhythm. It was the closest I've ever been to him, the closest I've got to those menacing, haunting eyes that ruined me any time I glanced at them. The plumpness of his lips, his rich olive skin, soft as chocolate. I knew I was in danger. I could feel my body crumble with every breath that filled my lungs. And Marcos knew exactly what he was doing to me. Fighting through my trembling fingers, I was falling into a state of internal distress. I couldn't handle it anymore. I tried to focus on the tie, but my aching, watering eyes were hopelessly distracted, for anywhere I looked became a hazard. My line of sight was now stuck on the jugular vein, delicately throbbing against his neck. I swallowed hard. Marcos Almeida was destroying me. My insides clenched up in painful knots, struggling against the behests of my inconsiderate lust as I tied that black silk fabric. And still, Marcos continued to watch me, watching me with a stoic face in excruciating silence, while passively encouraging my desperate agony. Any second, and I knew I was going to fall into him. I just knew it. Pull away, Bonnie. Pull away. But I couldn't pull away. Those devastating eyes penetrating the deepest parts of my heart made it impossible for me to do so. If Marcos Almeida had never sensed my dark little secret before, well then, he did now, without question. Miraculously, I finally fixed the tie, and it sat perfectly on his white collared shirt. I gazed into those glassy dark eyes, shaded within clusters of long black eyelashes, becoming ensconced one last time. I couldn't stop. And neither could he. He knew. It was over.